Welcome back to my series on the circle of fifths. In this video, I'm just going to teach you one trick involving the circle of fifths that will allow you to always remember how many sharp and flat notes are in every single key. If you're a classical musician, you may already be familiar with this, but otherwise you probably aren't. And we're going to start by looking at what you do in order to form a major key. Like, what's the basic formula behind it? And that formula is something that we're going to call whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. In other words, 2 whole steps and a half step, 3 whole steps and a half step. And that tells you the number of steps between all the notes in a major key. And I'll define whole steps and half steps, but first I'm going to note that in a major key there's a total of 7 notes. All right, so let's take the key of C major as an example. Number 1 through 7. And we'll end with a 1 because if you were playing your scales, you would always end with the first note, an octave higher. So note 1, we have C, and then we're going to apply that formula. Whole step, half step, like I said before, 2 wholes and then a half, and then whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. That's 3 wholes and a half. So I have my steps in between each of the notes in the scale. So from note 1 to note 2, in between there's a whole step. So if I start with C, and then I go up 1, 2, or excuse me, 1, 2, then I go to a D, and then a whole step above D, 1, 2, half step above E, 1, that's F, whole step above F, 1, 2, G, whole step above G, 1, and then go back to A, 2, whole step above A, that's going to be 1, 2, and then finally half step back to C. So from B back to C. We've gone all the way around the key at this point. So that's how you map out a key. You just do whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And when you do that with the key of C, in other words, if you start with the note C and then do whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, then your collection of 7 notes has 0 sharps and 0 flats. But if I were to go to the key of G and start with a G, then things will be a little bit different. Let's demonstrate. So G and then whole step to A, whole step to B. Now we need a half step to C, whole step to D, whole step to E, and now we have a whole step to F sharp. And then a half step takes us back to G. So how many sharps were there in the key of G? 1. And the sharp that we added was F sharp. It was also note 7 in the key of G. So note that it's note 7. All right, remember that. Tuck that away. All right, now if we go to the key of D, we can do the same thing. I'll do this a little bit faster every time, and eventually I won't even go through the process. So we have D, and then whole step to E, F sharp, and half step to G. And then we do whole step to A, whole step to B, whole step to C sharp, and then a half step back to D. All right, so now we have 2 sharps. We have the F sharp, which is the same as in the key of G, but we've added a new one, which is C sharp. And C sharp is note number 7. All right, now if we take the key of A, at this point I'm not going to count them, you can just take my word for it that I'm being accurate. We have A, B, C sharp, I'll circle that one, D, E, F sharp, circle that one, and then we have a new sharp, which is G sharp. And what's the new one? It's number 7. Seeing a pattern? So we're keeping all the old sharps and adding a new one, which is always note 7. And so now I've got F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp. And if I go to the key of E, the same thing's going to happen. I'm going to keep all of the sharps that I've been adding. So the F sharp, the C sharp, the G sharp. But now I add a new one, which is note number 7 in the key of E, and that's D sharp. And so then there's a total of 4. Then when I get to the key of B, I have all 5 of the sharps. And so the new one is going to be A sharp, which is number 7 in the key of B. And I just did an ellipsis because I don't want to write all those. And then when we get to the key of F sharp, here's the weird thing. They say that you have 6 sharps. You might be like, whoa, wait a second. There's no such thing as 6 sharps because we have A sharp, C sharp, D sharp, F sharp, and G sharp. That's only 5. And even just calling them by different names doesn't change the fact that there's only 5 black notes in the piano. So why do you say there's 6? It's for a reason that's a little bit technical. It's actually because if you're playing in classical music with, specifically if you're using sheet music, then when you're playing in the key of F sharp major, you would end up with both an F and an F sharp in the same key, and that gets a little bit confusing with the staff. So why don't we just call F E sharp? So they just make F and E sharp, and that's number 6. So if you didn't understand that, that's fine. All that to say, basically for classical music purposes, if you're using sheet music, it's more practical to say that there are 6 sharps in this particular key. But don't worry about it if you don't care. All right. And if I were to go in the opposite direction, and instead of going clockwise down this way, go counterclockwise out from C to the bottom, then I have a very similar pattern that emerges, but with some slight differences. So let's check that out. All right, let's look at the key of F. With the key of F, I'm going to have F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. And it's customary to call black notes by flat names if they're on the left half of the circle of fifths, and by sharp names if they're on the right half. So I'm going to carry on that tradition. All right, so we have one black note, which is B flat. And what number is it? It's number 4 in the scale. All right, now let's move on to B flat major. And in B flat major, we're going to have B flat, C, D, and then E flat, F, G, A, and then back to B flat. All right, so we keep our old B flat note, but now we've got 2 black notes, and the new one is note number 4, E flat. It turns out that we're going to have this pattern continue, where as we move along, every new key going counterclockwise to the bottom, you're going to be adding a new black note, and it's always going to be number 4 in the key. And so then we would end up with your B flat, your E flat, and then we're going to get A flat here. And then we would have 4 black notes in the key of A flat, and that one's going to be a D flat, is the new one. And then when we get to D flat major, we have 5 again. So in other words, all of the black notes in play. And our new one, we would be considering G flat. All right, so there you have it. It turns out that if you use a circle of fifths, you can easily recognize how many black notes are in every key, and there's a really wonderful pattern, which I'll summarize as, first of all, at the very top you have 0, and then you just fan out adding 1 in either direction till you get all the way to the bottom, where technically you have 6, but remember there's only actually 5 black notes. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the other thing to know is that as you're moving clockwise, then you're always just keeping the old sharps that you're adding, and the new sharp is always going to be note 7 in the key. And if you go counterclockwise, then you're going to keep all the old flats as you add, but the new flat is always going to be note 4 in the key. And with that, you now have learned the trick for using the circle of fifths to identify how many black notes are in every single key. I hope this was helpful. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, etc. And I look forward to seeing you next time. God bless.